Hello guys, Linker here with an endgame strategy guide for the Elder Tree. First and foremost, I want to thank Grub and his friends Zero, Season, and Ensign. They posted this Elder Tree data analysis, and them doing this enabled me to look deep into the data with Endgame Pros. So today we'll look into an analysis in my second ever visual guide for the Elder Tree to get ahead. In this video, we're going to do three things. We'll explain the analysis, the data we have on the Elder Tree. We'll go over key points on how to make your own decisions. And lastly, we'll go over default tree progression, for example, from chapter 12 to the very end game. Starting with the analysis, it has four main sections. You can see the special stat boost with class. You can see stuff like haste and dodge. You can see percentage stat boost by class and levels. For example, percent boost to attack. There's ability scaling. So these are going to be the ability levels that you unlock. And lastly, there's going to be the base stat boost as you progress. Now, I believe the special stats are going to be the most useful part that's not common knowledge. These are boosts that happen at level 2, 12, and every 5 levels after that, depending on your tree. Even this early, you can see not all branches are born equal. See how Sustenance gets access to dodge while Fortitude gets access to accuracy. Sustenance gets haste, Sorcery gets crit. Another thing that's mentioned here is the rewording of haste to movement speed and doubling those values. So that means that every 2 points of movement speed is 1 point of haste. These don't stack together, these are just different metrics. So you may be saying, Linker, why do you care? Does 1 point of haste here make that big of a difference? And my answer, it would be in fact so strong that it's going to shape your whole tree investments, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. One last thing about the special stats, they scale logarithmically. Hang with me here. This means that the more you invest in them, the less they improve. So you can see over here, for example, these bonuses come very early and later these get more sparse. It takes more investment to get them. Next is going to be the percentage stat boost. Now, these are little graphs to show how they add up for each class, and while they might seem similar, this is another place where they differ. You can see here exactly how much each class gains per each level. These are actually flat scalings that just add on, and the bonuses themselves are different. So Fortitude is a champion with a total of 2.5% stats per increase. Sustenance and Might are second place with 2.4 total. Celerity is at a measly 2.3, and lastly, Sorcery is at a lowly 2.25. And now these differences add up. So Max Sorcery adds 50% to stat boosts, while Fortitude can add up to 55%. Now this is not a huge difference, but it is notable, especially if you're threading around minimum power. Think about this difference as the little difference that you might need to push yourselves. These stats also add up logarithmically, so the difference in percent stat boost in tree levels 2 and 17 is significantly larger than the 82 and 97 over here. But do note how the curves flatten a bit around 30 to 70 in this range. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Next, we have the most interesting part of this, if you ask me, the abilities. The single most significant level of the abilities is the level where you unlock them. That, however, does not mean all abilities are born equal. Quite the contrary. Note how all abilities gain strong bonuses for their first 3 upgrades and then dim down. So here, for example, in Fortitude 1, you gain 0.5% per second. This is effectively 5% total healing for each one of these in the first 3 levels, and then each additional one only adds 3.5, which is less. This replicates itself across abilities, like for example Sustenance. It adds 40%, 40%, and then 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, which means that you get less bonuses as you advance through. The first 3 levels are going to be what's significant. And if we go over to this wonderful table over here, this is just each ability in each level. Which level does it take to level it as a whole on the tree? So for example, the third ability gets to level 2 at level 30, and as you can see, the third level, so as we just said, the third level is the most impactful one. The last one that gives the big bonus is going to be 45. This is going to be why for most trees, 35, 40, or 45 are going to be key points that you want to hit, depending on the tree. As for the abilities themselves, I won't talk all about them, but there's a few I want you to pay attention to. Biggest one, and this is something I see a lot of people are unaware of, has to be Celerity 3. Now, I want you to see this number. Look here. Look at this number. This is 140% haste. 140 is just an incredible bonus, so far beyond overtuned. It's absolutely incredible, under any metric there is. I know it's situational, you have to kill an enemy, blah blah blah, but most celerity fights are no longer than 30 seconds. They can win a thing campaign, it could take up to 9, and even if you're in a long 60-second fight, which with celerity heroes don't happen that much, the 6-second bonus would average at 14 haste across the battle. It's just so incredible just for one ability, and it's also all in one tick. The things heroes like Aaron, like Lucretia do with this bonus, it's just gross. It's something you'll have to see for yourself to completely understand. So this is going to be the key ability you want to grab, even if you don't main celerity, even if you second hero celerity like Feral, still incredibly overtuned. There's some other good things to note here. For example, the first Might ability is really strong. You can see how it does 40% health recovery reduction. It makes all enemies receive extra 21% damage. This is basically like, think of it as having an extra Feral on your side of the field, half a Feral maybe, on might-oriented teams. Now, I have plenty other notes on these abilities, like how Sustenance 3 just directly outclasses Sorcery 3 in most matches, especially stall sets, but I digress. The last thing I want to talk about is the base stats. Now, once you get to level 300 or so, the base stats don't mean much, even if you get this cap. These stats fall off, they don't mean that much at level 300 and further. The only situation where they mean anything at all is going to be in early game, which is when you would want to rush your main tree very early to get the base stat bonus, and in martial rating situations. We're talking Abyssal, Legends Championship, that's where these things get a little bit cruel though. These are exponential, with the breaking point being around level 77, meaning around here. I'll enhance this so you can see it around level 77, around here is where it starts seriously gaining, so that way if you're level 120, you have about 5 times what a level 60 player does, bonus from the tree, which is going to be very, very, very large. If you look at my game, for example, Twins are pretty average hero in terms of stats. They have about average stats. In level 240, you can see they have 800,000 HP, 50,000 attack, and about 15,000 defense or so. Now, my tree gives them 500,000 HP, 35,000 attack, and 7,000 defense. That's somewhere between half and 3/4 of their stats. This means that if you're likely to compete in LC, and you have a significantly higher chance if you get at least one of the trees to pass 77, so that you can gain those significant bonuses when you face others under martial ratings. Now that we set the stage for it, welcome to my second ever visual guide, how would I advise a new player to level up? Now it depends on a few things, and that's the reason I made this visual guide. While some LC players might gain from 77 as we said on certain trees, and resetting trees for Abyssal is certainly a thing you want to remember. In this one I'm going to assume you're a campaign focused player who's using a celerity carry like Aaron, Gwyneth, or Feral up to chapter 31. If you both main a hero from a different tree like Isolt and refrain using celerity heroes altogether, then first you should use them, but second you can move the order around quite a bit. But for most players this will be the optimal order when leveling through their campaign. Now what does this mean? First, you should get all 3 levels to level 5. Reason is just it's so cheap, it's so much cheaper than anything else as you saw in the previous guide, and the bonus that you get is so significant. So in terms of ROI, in the early game, getting all your trees to 5 is going to be the max benefit you do, and second, you'll want to take your main tree and level it up to 15. Now, what do you mean by main tree? Let's say you do Aaron carry, this is going to be celerity. You could do a sustenance carry, maybe you got an early Talene, maybe you do an Isol carry, a Sorcerer, this can be might. I know some of these appear later, and in that case you could just skip them later when they appear, but you'll want your main tree at 15 once you do it. Obviously you can reset for this later, even if you do a sorcery that I usually would recommend doing later. The first thing you want to do in the early game is grab sorcery, level it all the way up to 15. Whatever your main tree is, you do Chimera, it's sorcery, you do Daemon, it's fortitude, you do Aaron, it's celerity. Whatever it is, just level it to 15 because the bonus is going to be so significant. The second one though is going to be pretty classic. Across all different players, likely you'll want the 15 sustenance. Reason is that no matter what type your carry is, you will want the 50 sustenance as is, because sustenance heroes are the best with fitting with other heroes. Their 15 ability is really strong and the stats they gain throughout this time are impactful. So after you get your main to 15 and all trees to 5, sustenance all the way to 15 is going to be the best for you. Next, and that's the first time that you might encounter level cap, this is Celerity 30. As we talked about, Celerity 30 is an incredible ability. It gives you all this haste bonus as it is. Next, let's talk about leveling Celerity's third abilities. And every time we do this, I put a little asterisk. And the reason I put an asterisk here is that for some of you, leveling so fast is going to get you level capped. Now, what I advise you do in case you're level capped. Celerity third ability, you can gain it 5 levels before each of these. So you can do it at 25 or at 45. And if you do have those 3 levels, you should do it at 25 and move on, or 45 and move on. But if your max 3 level at this point is like 23, so you can't get the ability, I would recommend you just skip over and just carry on to what you can level. Maybe reset it later if you would like. But once you do hit those levels, once you can do 25 or 45, you should just invest all the way in Celerity up to 30 or 50, because the abilities that you gain out of these are just incredible. Now you're out of the early game, you will have your trees somewhat leveled, even though Celerity costs more, just worth so much. You'll have this win more ability. It will allow you to really enable your carries throughout that early game stage. And as you approach the mid game, you want to splash into some other trees. Now you might do this earlier if you are level capped, but my 10 first ability, as we talked about, very strong. Sustenance 25 is another one that's crucial for you to hit to get this C immunity, the energy that you get, especially if you keep up some heroes like Rowan, like Rosaline, like Namor, like Nomisu. All these heroes are going to be key, especially Tassie, once they gain their stats and their CC immunity, to really enable your carry. So this is going to be an investment that you won't regret on any case. And then you'll hit the point where you can invest into those luxury trees. It's going to be Fortitude and Sorcery. Now, Fortitude is incredible both for the stat gain and for the ability gain. It's just that it doesn't synergize with carrying. Like, the tree itself doesn't carry. The tree itself is kind of a carryless support kind of thing. It has the healing, it has the haste reduction, but if you have just Fortitude on its own, you might struggle to pay through. So at that point, once you get your Celerity to 30 and your Sustenance to 25, you should invest in your Fortitude tree to enable all these carries. With the only exception being Offensive Thorn, which I dislike personally. All Fortitude heroes really enjoy this. If you main Daemon, you might even do this slightly earlier, but Fortitude 15 is going to grant you key abilities that you will need to pave through in campaign and some of the towers. Now is the point where you want to take Celerity all the way up to 50. Not just 45, 50, even the bonus from the first ability on haste is just so good. Celerity 50 is going to be so strong for you. Now again, you might get blocked here, even despite how much it costs, even though you didn't level Sorcery to 15 yet. If you can get to 45, I recommend you dump all your essence into it. You won't regret it. This ability is just so powerful. But if you are blocked, you can just carry on through, reset, and come back to this later. Now at this point, you should be past the mid game. You should have plenty of strong heroes. You should be at multi-set. You already have 2 strong trees in Sustenance and Celerity, and now is the point where you should really capitalize on those branches that will enable your multi-set carries to carry through, on those branches that are important for your PvP success, these branches that you really need on the day-to-day to get by in the end game. Sustenance 37 is going to grant you haste, some key abilities. You're going to grab the second part of that third sustenance ability. That's going to give you some energy. You're going to get much stronger heroes with this haste that's going to enable them to beat your opponents in PvP, outspeed campaign opponents that are the same faction. It's going to really strengthen your compositions. And this is one thing you'll see. Once you get sustenance all the way to 37, you'll see that those heroes are much more effective at pulling off their ultimates and doing what they do to enable your carries. At that point, you'll invest in what I think is the worst tree right now. I think it should be buffed, and that's Sorcery. Now, Sorcery, you invest in it up to 15, and the reason you want it up to 15 if you haven't gotten it here earlier is because it supports your allies. Every time a Sorcerer ults, it supports all your allies to ult, and at that point you'll have plenty of good allies to do this, whether you have Ainz or Saphia or Mahira, maybe Lorsan or Skriath. All of them really benefit from buffing their allies in this manner, so you will want to grab Sorcery 15 as cheap as it is just before you keep on progressing with more mainstream branches and heroes. So after you get Sorcery to 15, Sustenance 47 is business as usual, buffing the haste, gaining abilities, and then this might be even interchangeable. You might be even able to do this before Sustenance is the time where you should do Might. Now, Might is a strong tree, but for campaign, most heroes don't need it much further than 10. only the best versions of it is in like a Twisted Realm and places like this is where you benefit from it, but towards the end game where you use those heroes to level, where you use Source to pave normally, where Source is a mainstream carry that you'll see. Isold is a set you probably already have built in all of its support, you will need to buff those heroes. This is for your Twisted Realm power, this is for your Abyssal replays, this is for your campaign. At that point, pushing Might all the way is going to be big benefits to you. The reason you want it at 37 is that 35 grants you the third part of the first strong ability that Might has, the one that reduces healing and buffs your own team damage. This is going to be very strong. On top of that, the additional 2 levels are going to give you 2 life leech. Now the static life leech on these heroes can really clutch you stuff, especially if you face some stuff that prevents them from healing. Think about Isold and Saurus that really rely on their ultimates to heal. Now if they're against an Aziz, they really want this life leech, and the life leech enables them to carry and stay alive much further than they would otherwise. So just these 2 levels grant you accuracy, grant you life leech, and 35 is going to grab you strong ability. On the way you grab lots of accuracy, you grab lots of strong things like the shield and the life leech bonus on the ultimate. Very strong bonuses from that tree at that point. So after you finish with these, and this is the first part where I think they might be interchangeable, the Might and the Sustenance, you move on to the very late game. Now at the late game, you want to grab all the key benchmarks for all your trees. So at this point, you probably want Fortitude all the way up to 32. Reason is at 32, you gain Haste from Fortitude. And as we talked about, Haste is crucial. It's also going to allow you to grab all key abilities like healing. At that point, you use Fortitude heroes as supports normally. So investing in Fortitude will pay back even if you don't use the Fortitude branch itself to carry, because it doesn't really carry, just kind of supports. And then you can start investing even in those lower branches like Sorcery again. 25 will grant you the CC immunity on Sorcery. Very important to pick on, especially if you want Mahira and the God comp. Stuff like that you'll begin using pretty normally, especially that price point, because all your trees are very far up at this point. Sustenance 62 is going to be one of those that grants you so much stats and so many good bonuses, you'll probably want to grab it at that point. It's just very crucial for your dodge, for your God comp that you'll have at this point, for all the other comps. Just grabbing this alone will enable Silas. It'll strengthen all your good comps, first of all, to face stuff in campaign, because you'll be able to pull off ults faster, you'll have more haste, you'll do the abilities faster, you'll support your team. You don't gain much from pushing stuff like Celerity past 50 until like maybe level 70 something. So before you do that, just a quick 15 levels is quicker than anything else that you have right now to really strengthen your team. And on the way, obviously you grab all these strong abilities, you grab stuff like the third ability bonus granting you slightly more energy. This is going to really enable your sustenance heroes to do more than they otherwise would have in all the sets they are. And then you go Fortitude all the way up to 47, grabbing many crucial stats along the way. This is going to grant you many strong abilities, and just the 32 to 47 jump on Fortitude is the last thing I advise you do towards the end game, because I feel like including it here will enable so many players. It just has so many good things, lots of good haste scaling that you get on that point. You get also access to plenty of abilities, you grab all your level 3s, and you get a much stronger Fortitude tree, and at that point you'll have all the Fortitude heroes to use it, even more niche stuff that you usually grab later, stuff like Orthos that takes gazing, and anything alike. Now obviously there's way to modify this tree. You can, as I've talked about, you can grab Might before, maybe you can go Might to 15 instead of Might to 10, even if you're not level blocked. There's different things you can do to play around, but this guideline should be very good for most players, especially if you main Celerity, but also if you just use it. If you main Daemon, use some Celerity heroes like Aaron and Pharrell, I would still go about that route. This should be a good baseline for most players, and I hope this helped you guys. Pulling this up took a lot of time for me, a lot of editing skills that I don't have. I know I'm not the best designer, so this took me more time than it should have. Please show appreciation, like, subscribe, and I've been Linker. Watch out for some community tab updates, big projects coming up, and peace.